Welcome back, my friends, to AA Recovery Interviews. I'm your host, Howard L., and I'm an alcoholic. Sober since January 1st, 1988, one day at a time. I'm grateful you've joined us. AA Recovery Interviews is the podcast where Alcoholics Anonymous members from around the world share their extraordinary stories of experience, strength, and hope. There are over 150 awesome interviews in this podcast series. I invite you to scroll through my past episodes on any podcast app to listen to them all. Today's show features Nicole S., whose battle with alcoholism was set against the backdrop of repressed feelings from childhood and the deep closet in which she hid her own homosexuality most of her life. Growing up in London, Nicole drank without consequence much of her life until she faced a seemingly insurmountable period of grief and isolation 6 years before she stopped drinking. Her escalating alcohol use, plus 2 suicide attempts, landed her in a psychiatric hospital. Amidst dwindling hope of ever recovering, Nicole was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in 2020. Her subsequent willingness to embrace the program grew into trust and confidence in her AA meetings. Feeling the acceptance and love from her fellow AAs, Nicole finally emerged from the closet and confided in her AA fellows that she was gay. That profound release from her lifelong secret greatly aided her commitment to working the program in earnest. Today, with 3.5 years of AA recovery, Nicole shares her special brand of experience with others, allowing her to truly enjoy life in sobriety. Nicole continues to work the 12 steps with an extraordinary sponsor from whom she is learning how to be of greater service to the program and her fellow alcoholics. It's an approach that works well for her and one that's worthy of sharing with others who are facing the same kind of challenges she has surmounted. I believe you'll find much to gain in listening to Nicole's story, despite the audio quality issues we faced with Zoom on the day we recorded the interview. So I invite you to enjoy the next hour of AA Recovery Interviews with my new friend and AA sister, Nicole S.
Nicole, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Nicole.
Hiya. And I'm an alcoholic.
You are? Okay, well,
Yes.
I was interested in
definitely.
having alcoholics on the show, so you do pass that first requirement. Actually, it was your sponsor, Tilda B., who told me a little bit about your story, and she had suggested you as a guest for AA Recovery Interviews, so I'm really pleased that you're here. Have you had a chance to listen to the podcast?
Yeah, I started when Tilda told me about them. I literally started from the very beginning, and I was going all the way through them. And then, unfortunately, my mum died, and so things just kind of trailed off. But I'm getting back into them, so it's all good.
Oh, that's great that you had a chance to listen. And I am sorry to hear about your mother's death.
Yeah.
You're in England?
Yeah, I'm in Southeast London. Plumstead Common. I don't know if you've heard of Plumstead Common. It's quite famous in London. It's very green and very posh.
So green and posh in the middle of one of the biggest cities in the world?
Yep. And London is very much a building city. So when you get greenery, people are delighted.
So did you grow up in London?
I did. I was born in London, but then moved down to Hertfordshire, which is kind of East Anglia, down the bottom of the country, and was there for 26 years before I moved back up to London again.
You've been sober now for what, 3-4 years?
This will be my 4th year on the 26th of September.
Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, continuous sobriety. Sometimes not so much emotionally, but I haven't picked up a drink.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like to explore on these podcasts. Let me ask you, September 26th, 2020, so that was right at the beginning of COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah. So COVID was when everything, as well as going wrong for the world, went wrong for me, because that's when my drinking really, really ramped up. Because obviously there was nowhere to go, there was nothing to do. Well, no, let me correct that. So at the beginning of COVID, my drinking started to get worse. And then when we were let back in, we were let back out, it continued to get worse.
Can you tell me a little bit about the home in which you grew up? Was there alcoholism present in your family of origin?
I didn't come from an alcoholic family. I mean, my parents drank, but they didn't drink excessively. I don't recall there being any moments of alcoholism in our family, but me and my mum, we would have these little cheeky slurps. You just have a quick sip from the bottle, and that would be it. It was when Dad would trot it out to the pub, we say, "Oh, do you fancy a slurp?" And we just run, have a quick slurp, and that would be it. But there wasn't anything major until I'd say 2015 was when things started to go a little bit wrong. I lost my job, and it took a great while for me to get another one. And in between that time, I'd got been given a redundancy package, so I wasn't struggling.
So redundancy is like a severance pay that tides you over until you get another job.
Yeah, it was a severance pay. So London is very expensive, and I have an alcoholic brain, obviously. So you think, oh, I've got all of this money, let me spend it.
Sounds like an alcoholic thing to do.
It's a very, very alcoholic thing to do. And so I got a job, but the fears of me not having another job and various other things conspired to send me into what I now know was my first breakdown. So I was signed off. But the drinking, ironically, I'd have a notebook that I would write how much I drank in it. And it would be like 2 glasses a night, something like that. And I was really proud of that amount. As far as I was concerned, that wasn't a lot. As far as the doctors were concerned, yes, that's a lot. If you're having 3 glasses of wine a night, that's a lot.
Why were you writing it down, though?
To this day, I do not know why I was writing it down.
Was there a part of you that sensed that maybe you were drinking too much, or?
Yeah, that I was drinking too much. And I thought, well, if I, now you say it that way, that maybe if I looked at it and thought, right, I can keep a record of that, and then maybe I'd cut back on one day and think, right, I'll treat myself another day or whatever. But I would always have 2 bottles of wine every weekend, every Saturday and every Sunday. I would always have that. And it would always have to be the equivalent, the ABV, so the alcohol by volume, could not be lower than 13%. And that was my thing. And then COVID hit. The thing with COVID is that it didn't stop us from shopping, but it made us all little islands, so we couldn't go anywhere. But the shops were open. So of course, and I don't know what it was like in the States, but you'd have massive long queues and the shelves would be empty and all this kind of thing. It was just ridiculous. But I made sure that I had wine in the house, and that's when I noticed how much I was drinking. And I would say to myself, this wonderful word, functional alcoholic, because I was still managing to go to work. I didn't lose my job, I didn't lose anything. Did lose my job, and then I lost my flat, and I had to come back home to my parents.
So all that happened within what period of time?
I'd say 2017 to 2018 was when I lost my flat, and I didn't have a job. So I called my parents and I said, "Can I move back home?" And they said yes, and that was fine. And I didn't factor in how it would affect my dad, especially me being home, because me and my mum were very close. And mum was delighted temporarily that I was back. But Dad, enjoyed it for a while, and then he'd noticed that mum would sit with me, and I would be trying not to get in their space. But we have very strong personalities. Whilst I had a strong personality, I'm also a people pleaser. So I'd be trying to fighting my corner, but also trying not to fight my corner, which, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Sounds like you were trying to manage what was going on there at home.
We were very much independent people, and Mum, God love her, wanted to have the same relationship that we had as children, as when I was before I moved out when in my 20s. I'm not that person, so I've been living on my own for over 20 years by this point. and very, very much used to people not walking into my room when they felt like it. And there was definitely blame on both sides. I didn't handle it well. They didn't handle it well. So basically what happened was that I finally got a job, which was wonderful. And but Dad was getting increasingly frustrated, let's put it that way, with me being there. And I was getting frustrated with his, quite frankly, bitchy comments every 5 seconds. And he'd be passive aggressive, and he'd do stuff. He's a very controlling man, God love him, but he would do stuff that was so contrary to my psyche. And of course, I would be, the people pleaser in me would be like, kind of, oh, but you know, it's his space and this and that, and I wanted to be a good girl and not cause problems. So I turned my frustration inward, and inwardly, that was me drinking.
That was you drinking.
Yeah, I would come back from work. I don't know if you've ever heard of the store Tesco, the grocery store Tesco. So the station was opposite this massive Tesco's, and I'd come back from work, and the first thing I'd do is go there and get a bottle of wine and stick it in my handbag and go upstairs. You know, my mum, bless her, would greet me with a glass of wine. You know, 'cause I had a long day at work. We sit and we chat, and that would be that. And then the one thing that really did annoy me was, well, it was a massive resentment, was that they're retired, and they insisted that I did, was after a long, really long day, where they insisted that I would come home and clean the kitchen after them having been, you know, there'd be a pile of dishes and stuff, and I'd have to do that when I came home. So, you know, you breathe through it, and like I said, you know, I turned everything inward and drank on it. And I'd go upstairs and I would finish a bottle of wine, and then I'd have to rinse, repeat, get up in the morning, and there would be a satisfying clatter as I threw the bottle in the bin near the bus stop that I'd go to work at, and you know, that kind of thing. And that went on for about 4 months before it all culminated in a massive row with my dad. It was raining. I bought an umbrella. He was upset about the fact that I bought an umbrella. And I just said to him, that's it, give me 6 months and I'm going to move out. I cannot live with you anymore. And, you know, he was stunned because he, like I said, he's very controlling. And I think he wanted to be the one to tell me to leave. But I said, I am going, I cannot do this.
We're talking a lot about stuff that happened after you went back to live at home. Were your parents, whose behavior at that point probably wasn't a whole lot different than it was when you were a little kid, who really changed? Was it your parents that changed their behavior, or were you coming into it now with a different mindset as an adult, walking into the same kind of relationship that you had when you were a kid? I just wondered whether you at the time noticed that within yourself, that you had changed, but they hadn't.
Yeah, when I moved back to my parents, I was in my late 40s. And yeah, I definitely changed. I'd become more independent. I'd become set in my ways. But there was also, like I said, the people pleasing part of me. And you revert to childhood. I reverted to being that child and saying yes and no, but then going to my room and being an absolute wreck of resentment and drinking. So yeah, I changed.
You mentioned you hadn't started drinking until you were in your 20s. When you were a child and those kind of feelings came up, before alcohol, what did you use to do that?
I pushed it down. There was a lot of fear from me towards my dad, because you didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to upset him. So I would pretty much be a yes girl. And then when, you know, and if he said, no, you can't do something, I would accept it. I would accept his rule as law.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, when I left and was living by myself and then came back home, there was still that respect, but with that respect and obedience.
So that's behavior that had been going on, though, pretty much your whole life. Your dad was treating you again like he might have been treating you when you were a kid?
Yeah, he definitely treated me. He reverted to the father and the little child. and this is how this relationship works. When I came back, I didn't show my kickback against that to him, but I did kick back against it.
So you mentioned that you came back in your late 40s. So sometime between when you moved out, how old were you when you moved out from your folks?
26.
So somewhere, let's
Yeah.
say within those 14, 16, however many years between that point and when you moved out, you mentioned being a functional alcoholic, but
Yeah.
when did it turn from being a leisure activity to being a problem for you, drinking that is?
I'd say roughly like 2015. From about 2015, I began to really notice how much I was drinking, and I would be drinking more than I was eating, you know, but it would be pits and troughs. It would be like kind of, if life was good, the drinking eased back. If life was bad, it ramped up.
So would you say that you were drinking to change the way you feel on an ongoing basis, or was it just occasional? You'd let things mount up for a while?
No. Definitely ongoing basis. That's why I drank. But I also drank to suppress, because I'm gay. I also drank to push that down because I had internalized homophobia, that's what I'm trying to say. And I didn't want to admit that I was gay to anyone. I only came out when I was sober, and I got sober. So there was a lot of hiding of myself and a lot of internalized homophobia, lots of shame, as well as drinking. I would spend money to make myself feel better. So I'd act out in so many ways, but drinking was, drinking and buying lots and lots of shoes.
You know, I've known over the years that I've been sober a lot of people from the LGBTQ community, and one of the difficult experiences, I think, is for people who are in that LGBTQ community to find some sort of balance between the life that they've been living up to the point at which they either come out or it becomes okay for them to let the world know who they are. And I was just curious, from your point of view, what do you see as the biggest challenges to somebody who is gay or in the LGBTQ community?
I think one of the biggest challenges we face is how much alcohol is a thing within the LGBTQ community, because they literally shove it down our throats, especially in Pride. So Pride Month, you cannot move for adverts that say, like Cause Bacardi, and
Right.
kind of, we're celebrating Pride and and all the Pride flag. And the alcohol industry makes it fun and gay and wonderful and smashing and great, but they literally target LGBTQ community because we're seen as fun and frivolous, and alcohol helps you be fun and frivolous. But yeah, when it comes to the gay community, they do really hammer it home.
A few of my guests over the last 3.5 years have mentioned about some of the stress and strain over trying to live their life as a gay person before they come out, and then the challenges that they face coming out, and then after they're out, what sort of challenges they faced. When you were living at home, did you come out after you had lived at home, or what?
Yeah, and after I moved out, I came out.
You knew you were gay at what point in your life?
Knew I was gay deep down all my life. Knew I was gay to admit it to myself, I'd say definitely at the start of COVID.
At the start of COVID. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is a number of years into your life at this point.
Yeah. I was so deep in the closet, you need a miner's helmet to find me. I was like, I am not coming out. No.
I mean, that in and of itself would be enough reason to drink, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and within the family, there isn't any gay people in our family, and there wasn't homophobia from family. It was just me. I was like, I wasn't ashamed to be gay, but I just didn't want to be. Up until the moment I came out, I just didn't want to be, and I would people will say, when are you going to settle down? When are you going to have kids? Da, da, da. And I'll be like, kind of, oh no, I've got shoes, I've got this, I've got that. I don't want to have kids. And
so that feeling of not wanting to be gay was more about what other people thought about you than it was about how you felt about yourself.
yeah, then what I thought about me.
Had you been in an environment where it would have been a safer, more acceptable thing for you to come out, is that something you would have done earlier if you knew that you would have support from your family and other people around you?
Hmm. I honestly don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I would have come out until I came out when I was ready to, when it was time.
So when you came out, what was the feeling around that? How did you feel?
I've often shared in meetings that being sober has given me. I'm more honest with myself. And when I came out, literally, apart from people going, yeah, we know, which is so irritating. Please don't do that. just like, excuse me, being vulnerable. Do not
Yeah.
need you being a smart ass. Thank you.
Right.
But yeah, so when I came out, the relief, it was just like the weight had been lifted, and I just felt, oh, I can breathe again. I can breathe. I actually came out in an AA meeting.
In an AA meeting,
Came out in an AA.
what was that like? What were the circumstances around that?
Oh, we were sharing, and it was a Sunday. I can't remember the day, but it was a Sunday morning meeting, and I just said, and I really like this group. I feel very safe and trusted, and I'm gay, and that's it. And there was smiles and says,
Was that a group in which there were other gay?
no, it wasn't a gay meeting. It was just a Sunday morning meeting.
Had you ever considered going to gay meetings before you actually came out?
No, didn't look us. To be fair, I also didn't realize that we had gay.
What I'm trying to do now in my own mind is I'm trying to frame the time segments that you're talking about here. You came out in 2015.
No, I came out in 2021.
Oh, you came out in 2021. Okay.
Yeah.
What was the 2015?
2015 was when the drinking started to get really bad.
Okay, so between 2015 and 2021,
Yeah.
that's about a 6-year period there.
That's when it got really bad.
Can you talk to me about the progression from when you first noticed it was becoming bad till the point at which you finally said enough is enough, I've got to get help?
Yeah, mostly I drink when I was bored, miserable, happy, sad. I drank because I wanted to. There's no other way of framing that. I didn't need a reason. I just needed an excuse, and so that's why I drank. Like I said to you at the beginning, I would make notes in a little notebook to show to myself, to say, right, this is how much you're drinking. Oh, it's not that bad. So I moved out in 2018 into an extremely unsafe environment, and that was in the middle of COVID. And the environment was unsafe because it was a house share. I don't know if you call them house shares in the States. It was a house share.
Sure.
And one of the tenants took a shine to me, which I did not appreciate. And the landlady did absolutely nothing. Her response to me was to, just keep out of his way in the middle of the pandemic. Where the bloody hell do you expect me to go? And she wouldn't put a lock on my door, and I'd end up sleeping in my room with 2 cases between the bed, literally barricade myself in so he couldn't come in. She'd say things like, "Oh, he won't come in." I think, you don't know that. So I felt very, very unsafe, and fear was a lot of a driving factor. That because I drank to blackout. I know that now because hindsight's a wonderful thing, and I drank to blackout. I never thought I would be a day drinker and an early morning drinker. So it culminated. The rot set in end of 2019. Yeah, it was in September. I'd had a string of bereavements, and about 9 people died in the space of about 6 months.
Are these family people or friends?
Family and friends, yeah, but they were all very close to me. And one of the people who passed away, I wanted to go to the funeral.
Yeah.
And Dad said I couldn't go. And that sent me into such depression that I was signed off work for, as in, I was given, do you say signed off in the States? I was given sick leave.
Yeah, sick leave, yeah. Time
Yeah.
off.
I was for about 3 months for depression and bereavement.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I drank most of the entire time that I was signed off, came back to work. And in that time, I would be, the time I'd start drinking, I always said to myself, can't start drinking till 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Starts to get earlier and earlier and earlier, and then finishing later and later and later. So I drink to black out, wake up, maybe have something to eat, and then start drinking again. And I'd end up drinking until 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. 2, 3 in the morning, go to sleep, rinse, repeat. And that's when the day drink, when I say day, I mean about 7 o'clock in the morning, drinking started. Where I lived at the time, there was an off-license, a liquor store thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not allowed to sell alcohol before 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an arrangement with him that I would turn up at 6:30 and he would sell me 6 bottles of wine. And that's when you know that things are getting very, very serious. And that went on for about 6 months. It was about 6 months of me just hammering alcohol.
Were the people around you, Nicole, saying anything to you, or were you getting any feedback either at work or from the people who you lived with about your drinking? Did anybody say, "Oh, you've noticed that you're really drinking a lot," or that you showed up drunk, or other signs that they would notice in you that you might want to deny?
No, not a thing, because I drank at home and I was an at-home drinker. And if I knew I had to go into work, I would pull myself together and get to work. I mean, in hindsight, people must have known, but they never said anything. And I would always go to lunch, and there was a bar road, and I would always have a couple of glasses of wine at lunchtime.
How do you feel about that? What I want to ask you how you feel about is the fact that people could have said something, but they didn't. Did you ever get a sense of why they didn't, or was it because they just didn't know you, or was there something about your relationship with them that made them not want to say anything, or were they just oblivious?
I don't think they were oblivious. The one person, and she literally saved my life, was my people manager, my boss, who I reported to. I mean, people did notice. They said that you weren't yourself. You'd lost a lot of weight because I wasn't eating, because I was just drinking, and said you weren't happy. And they noticed, but I don't think a lot of people put it down to drinking. They knew that I was having problems where I was living. So I think a lot of people may have just put it down to the stress of that, but not drinking, because I could pull myself together and it would be fine. And I could present as a sober person. But the moment I got indoors, all bets were off.
That's one of the ironic things about being a functional alcoholic is that the fact that you're functioning would seem to contradict the fact that you are an alcoholic, that I don't have problems because I can function. And especially if you've got lots of other reasons why your behavior is as it is around other people. You mentioned 9 deaths. You mentioned some of the situations where you lived that people at work wouldn't say anything about it because they thought it was something else. It was always possible for me when I was drinking to pass off my behavior while drinking on something else.
Oh, yeah.
And just say, well, yeah, that happened. I was really depressed at the time, or I was really confused because of a situation that occurred. Everything but the truth. And I wondered whether you ever found that happening to you.
The only person who said something to me, and that was simply because I'm jumping ahead a bit, was when I phoned up my boss and said, I just tried to kill myself. I kept it together. I'm very good at not showing how much I am hurting.
Can you take me through the sequence of events between when you were drinking up to the point at which you did try to kill yourself? What was going on in your mind and in your environment?
In the environment, I was still stuck in the place that I felt unsafe. I wasn't speaking to my parents because I'd left the house on a bad note. I felt very betrayed by my mum, especially because, dad wanted me out as far as I was concerned, and I felt very abandoned. So, but ironically, I'm not saying but sometimes you when you drink yourself into a certain state, and then you think, just something in your mind just says, no, just stop for a second. I remember this clear as day. I remember, no, you can't drink anymore because your room's a mess, and if they find and if you die, they're going to come into this room, so you got to tidy up. And that kind of little bits of it. Yeah, that's
I
how
got to tidy up because I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah, I'm going to tidy up and then I'm going to kill myself. Exactly. That
Is-
makes perfect sense to me.
Isn't that dark humor for you?
Exactly.
God.
No. You can't do that. But yeah, so there was, like I said, there was the deaths, there was the estrangement from my parents. COVID was still happening, so we were still indoors, and I felt very, very alone. I remember walking down. God, it was a long walk. Walking down to get my usual supply of wine, and I had got this. The thing is, I've got wonderful friends, and they check in on me, and I'd just been. I can't remember if I'd seen her in a moment where we could go out, but I'd seen a friend a couple of months before, and this is significant, and we'd been shopping. So I came back, and so I was walking down the street to get my wine from the store, and as I was walking up this very, very long hill with 6 bottles of wine in my hand, and I was just so tired, and I was so done, and I just stopped and I thought, I'm going to walk in front of a car, and it has to be a red car. So I put my shopping down, and I looked up the road, and car came, nothing. And then a red car came, and I thought, this is it. This is when I'm going to do it. And it started to come, and all of a sudden, no word or lie, suddenly a pair of boots that I had bought, I went, I haven't worn those boots yet. Picked up my wine, and I went home. And that is the only reason I didn't walk in front of the car, was because of a pair of boots. Because I thought, oh, I'm warm then. Went back home, and the next morning I called my boss and I said, I just tried to do this, and she was like, okay, fine, let's try and get you. And I was signed off again, but that didn't stop me drinking, because I think that was a cry for help, and obviously, but I needed to be put somewhere safer, because I was still on my own, and I still had access to alcohol. I still was in an unsafe environment, and then so that's kind of February, March time.
And this is what year? This is
2020.
okay. So This is February and March of 2020.
Yeah, and I was signed off again, and then I think we went back into lockdown in 2020. In August, I tried to stab myself in the chest with a knife.
What was your thinking before that?
I honestly don't know what I was thinking. All I know is that I was hurting so much, I just wanted it to stop.
So between February and August, when you made a second attempt, your boss already had the knowledge that you had tried that.
Yeah.
Did she seek to get you professional help, or
Yes, she did.
And so what did that look like?
So the second attempt, I called her again, and I said, and she said, no, this is too soon. You are not well. I'm going to get, and she got me in the Priory. And so she got me professional help, and I was hospitalized for 2 weeks.
So this is after your second attempt.
Second, yeah.
After the first attempt, when you let her know, was anything done at that point?
I got counseling, but not in-house counseling. I was given phone counselling,
I
and that
see.
helped. But then things just ramped up again, and in August it just culminated in the second attempt, and she got me into a hospital, the Priory, and I was there for only for 2 weeks, and I never told my parents a thing.
We'll be right back. My friends, if you're enjoying AA recovery interviews, I invite you to check out my latest audiobook, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism. This is the word-for-word, cover-to-cover reading of the first edition of the Big Book, published in 1939. It's a relaxing yet meaningful and engaging way to listen to the Big Book anytime, any place. Have a free listen at Audible, iTunes, or Amazon. While you're there, search for my other audiobook, Lost Stories of the Big Book, 30 original stories from the first and or second editions, missing from the third and fourth editions of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's also available from Amazon as a Kindle book or in paperback if you'd like to read along. You're going to love it. And we're back. Now, it sounds to me like your boss at work gave you an extraordinary amount of leeway during this time. Did you ever get a sense of why she gave you that amount of space? Because most employers, by the time somebody's behavior has gotten to be like yours sounds like it was, most of the time people are either terminated or their employers do find a way to get them the help that they think they need at that point. What do you attribute that to?
She liked me. She adores me. We're good friends. And she said, I know this isn't you. I know this isn't you. She said, you just went downhill. And I want you back. And she fought for me. She fought really, I mean, literally, when I say she saved my life, she saved my life.
Did you ever stop to think about the connection between her and, let's say, the grace of God or the grace of something out there? If you now that you have a program to identify a higher power, let's say, did you ever get a sense that she was in your life for that particular reason?
Absolutely.
What did that look like?
When I was in hospital and I came out, I just thought I could not have done this. I would not be alive without her. And she's tough but fair. And I almost did lose my job because one of the people that I supported, objected to, because I still wasn't well enough when I came back. She said to me, listen, we can put you, I was put on a formal PIP, like a performance
improvement.
Improvement plan, that's one. Yeah, so I was put on that. She said, we can put you on that. She said, but to be honest, I don't think you are going to survive this. So we can either take you off it, you can either try and do this test, or you can drop down. You can, drop down and take an easier job. So I just dropped down and took an easier job. And I'm still there.
Still there.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you go from not wanting to get sober? Was that while you were in the hospital? I mean, did you draw the connection there between the suicide attempts and your drinking?
No, not at all. I'm a quite stubborn person. When I went into the hospital, I drank that morning. I drank the morning because I went in on the 25th. So I drank that morning, but I didn't drink as much as I normally did. So I only had one glass and I was violently ill. And I remember that journey. God, it was painful. I was so weak and so tired that I literally had to stop. I was trying to get my case up the stairs. I had to stop every step and sit down because I was so ill and I was so weak. So alcohol just did not occur to me that alcohol was not helping. I knew in my mind that I should cut down, and because of the functional thing, I thought I'm functional, it's fine, I can cope as long as I just get it down to a reasonable level. But it just, until I stopped drinking, it wasn't a problem. Everything else was a problem.
Yeah, you went into the hospital the day after your second suicide attempt?
Yeah. Oh, well, about a month later. Yeah, it took a while for them to get me in, but yeah, about a month later I went in. So the second attempt was mid-August, something like that, and I got in 25th of September for 2 weeks.
So leaving somebody who is suicidal and who fails to complete suicide for a month on their own, that's not necessarily the best course of action. How did you deal with that?
I didn't feel, I think because I knew that she was getting me somewhere, that I was going to be in a place where I was safe and I was going to get help. In this time, I was still having telephone counselling.
Okay, yeah.
Because I knew that I was going somewhere. That's what kept me relatively stable. And I'm incredibly strong when I need to be.
Yeah, so it sounds like it. I mean, you wouldn't be sitting here with me this morning if you weren't. You'd be
Dead.
So you were drinking during that month period. You drank the morning that you went into the hospital for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, did you actually stop drinking during that 2-week period, or?
Yeah, you weren't allowed alcohol. Yeah, they searched the bag. They even took away my mouthwash because it had alcohol in it, and that kind of thing. There's no alcohol whatsoever.
So what course of treatment did they recommend to you?
It was CBT. It was in-group therapy, and I was on a diet plan because I was underweight, and I lacked B vitamins and all that kind of stuff. And getting shots was not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was when I was being discharged that a woman said, "You need to go to AA." And I went to my first online AA meeting that evening. So I was discharged. I went to my first AA meeting that night.
And was that, so the last time you drank was when?
So they said that my sobriety date was the 26th of September because that was my first alcohol-free day.
What was your first meeting like? I know it's because I got sober in a live meeting and a lot of people did, but I understand and acknowledge the power of the Zoom meetings as well. What was that first Zoom meeting like for you?
It was interesting because I didn't know what to expect at all. And I remember them saying, "Any newcomers?" And I said, "Me." And I said, "How many days sober?" And I said, "I've been 2 weeks sober," and that was it. And I thought that group was really good but I've not been back to that group. I got my first sponsor was from that group. Unfortunately, she went back out, and so that was sad. And I've not been back to it since. So she was my sponsor for about 6-8 months, something like that.
The first 6 or 8 months, was that all Zoom meetings, or at what point did you start going to live meetings?
Oh, live meetings, not for at least 2.5 years.
Really that long?
Because I am a creature of habit.
Yes.
And deeply shy, and I get anxious if I'm going into a place where I don't know anybody. And despite my, I think they're called ambiverts, despite my external jollity, I am really shy and introverted. And if I don't actually have to go somewhere, then I won't. I've now found an in-person meeting, so it's an LGBT one, and that also helps. The only in-person meetings I've been in LGBT ones.
Cool. Yeah, and I've been to, because of where I work. There was a club that was predominantly LGBTQ. I used to go over there for their noon meetings because it was so convenient to where I worked. And what I noticed was that the level of sharing and the level of concern and care that people had for each other in that meeting was extraordinary. And I always felt so comfortable there. I've never been a homophobe or anything, but a lot of times people would say, "Where are you going to meetings at noon?" I would tell them. They say, "Well, isn't that a little uncomfortable for you?" And I would say, "No, not at all, because we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about staying sober."
And also with LGBT meetings, we're fighting two battles. we're fighting the homophobia and alcohol, and not just the homophobia outside of ourselves. There's a homophobia inside. Yeah, like you said, there's a different warmth in a gay meeting than there is in a straight one.
Now, so you started going to that particular live meeting. Was that an offshoot of a Zoom meeting? Were you going to Zoom LGBTQ Zoom meetings?
I was going to I was going to live game Zoom meetings every week. But you have to kiss the proverbial frog before you find the one that sits right with you. And a couple of them were nice, but sometimes you get personalities will out. Let's put it that way. So you just like, yeah, this isn't for me, and just back off, and you find another one. There are loads of other meetings.
So the role of a sponsor is to help take the sponsee through the steps.
Mhm.
Did your first sponsor attempt to do that with you?
My first sponsor got me to step 4.
She did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm now on step 8 with my current sponsor.
Did you encounter any obstacles along the way with that first sponsor in terms of working the steps? You said she got you to step 4.
I felt that she wanted me to have the same AA program as her. And I remember once we were talking and she said, "Oh, you've got to do it this way." And I said, "That's not how I am." And she said, "Yeah, but that's how I am." And I was like, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Not how the book says it, but how she says it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was definitely how she wanted it done. Whereas my current sponsor, she questions, she challenges, she suggests, and she lets me make my own decisions. Obviously, not stupid ones, but I mean, currently we're on a challenge where she's challenged me. One of my things is shopping, and challenged me to not shop until the end of May. And I've done it. I've not bought any clothes, any shoes, any handbags. But the 1st of June is going to be the best day of my life, because I'm just like, I don't care. Yes.
It's like the alcoholic who decides to give up alcohol for a month.
And then goes back to it.
That's why there are other 12-step programs, obviously, out there.
Exactly. Yeah. But that being said, I don't miss shopping. I don't miss it, and I know that I can go without it, because the shopping I've been doing is it is elsewhere. I've got storage units, so I go in there and I've been finding stuff that's been in there for years. I'm thinking, oh, actually I can wear that instead, and But yeah, I don't think I would go back to the level of shopping that I was before, because I don't miss it.
Do you feel like that is an addiction as well, the shopping?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What lines would you draw between that and drinking? Do you think that particular addiction has the potential to pull you back into drinking, or is that completely separate?
No, it's completely separate. I drank because I was deep down miserable and afraid and ashamed of myself. I shop because I like shopping. And it's as simple as that. I love shoes, I love handbags, and I love clothes, but I have enough. I do not need it. For example, last night I was coming back from my meeting, and I found a drugstore, and they were offering some lip glosses for 2 for £14. And the old shopper, even though I've got a ton of lipsticks, was like, kind of, yes, get that. And I actually picked them up, and I was on the way to the cash desk with it, and I was like, what the hell are you doing? You don't need it. So I put it back. The alcoholic in me, when it comes to drinking, would have drank regardless. The shopper puts it back and says, okay, let's just think about this. Have you got something? Yes. Right, put it back. And I don't want to let anybody down, especially myself, by drinking again, because there isn't another recovery.
So I know your sponsor, and I know she works a really good program and is very oriented towards the book and the steps and everything else. And the fact that she has issued a challenge regarding another addiction that you have, I think is really important. And the fact that that decision to put the lipsticks back may have been influenced by the quality and the work you've done in AA,
Absolutely.
I think says a lot to the overlap between the different addictions and the different programs for them. So kudos on that to you.
Oh, yes. I know that I would have bought it regardless if I was drinking.
So the point that you're at right now, bring me up to kind of the present day here, Nicole. What does your life look like today versus, let's say, a year ago or 5 years ago? How would you compare those?
It's night and day. Whereas I often say that I drank to be sociable, but I was always invariably too drunk to socialize because it just would not work. But now that I'm sober, I've got more friends. I go out more. I'm more accepting of myself. You know, there are days where everybody gets a bit down on themselves, but they're less and less these days. I am my harshest, and I mean virulent critic. And I can be down on myself. Like today, for example, I've made a mistake and it's sitting at the back of my head. And I'm trying, even though I've apologized, acknowledged the mistake, I'm still, that little voice in me is beating myself up. And I'm just like, let it go, forgive yourself, you're fallible. It takes time and I'm working on it, but I will get there. But yeah, I would have drunk on this mistake. I would have drunk on every single thing. I would have been too plastered to go anywhere. The amount of times that I've gone out with friends and fallen asleep in the bathroom, and they've had to put me in bed. I've not wet the bed or anything like that. I don't drive, so there's been no drink driving in my. I've not called. The only person my drinking hurt was myself. It didn't hurt anybody else. And obviously, one thing I forgot to mention about the relationship with my dad is if he said that I was doing something too much, I'd do it more.
Yeah.
Because that was me rebelling.
Yeah, and it was proving to him that he has the problem and not you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. Talk to me for a minute here about the spiritual aspect of your program.
I never thought, when I first came into the program, I didn't believe in God. And I was like, nope, there isn't a God because, there just isn't one and blah, blah, blah. But I believe that I have a higher power. I say either God, Gomu, which is God of my understanding, or HP. I pray every day. I do a gratitude list. I know that my life is richer because of AA, because I've nurtured my spiritual side. I don't know how I've nurtured it, but I do feel more spiritual. I just know that he, she, it, they has got me. And as long as I don't take my will back, which like most alcoholics were apt to do, my life will be a nice steady stream of happiness. But when I do take it back, it all goes terribly wrong.
Yeah, it usually does. And what's interesting about it is that we as alcoholics, at one point, we were used to living our lives with everything extremely wrong all the time. And it's amazing how even when we've been sober for a while, those kind of feelings can surface very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah. We are our biggest bully.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and there is nobody that can hurt us more than we hurt ourselves. Nobody.
That's a really good point. The last thing I wanted to ask you about was one of the tenets of our program that we can do even prior to having worked all 12 steps is the service aspect. And I wondered is what your take on that is, and whether you've had the opportunity to enhance your program through the service to AA or others or an individual or just society in general.
Yeah, I have service commitments in 1, 2, 3 meetings a week. Yeah, and I love service because it's just I'm a co-host, tech host, and 2 tech hosts, 2 meetings. And I tried to sponsor somebody, but the person that I attempted to sponsor just was not getting the program, and then kept relapsing. So
The fact that you tried to help someone else who didn't get it or whatever, the mark of success in that situation is, did you stay sober?
oh yeah,
And so even when individuals help other individuals and that person who's being helped goes their own way and doesn't take the help they're given, it's the helper who is the one who benefits. And so
I heard from her recently, and she's 73 days sober.
oh, she is.
She's holding on to the program, which is just fantastic. And I'm just like,
Congratulations on that, and on the fact that she would share that with you and allow you to be part of her own personal success with that is, yeah, it's terrific. Let's say you knew somebody who was like you were when you were drinking. What would you, with the knowledge that you have now, what would you say to them that might make a difference in the way that they are proceeding with their alcoholism?
you're hurting yourself. You think that you're not hurting yourself, you're hurting other people. Get to AA. Even if it's just one meeting, and keep coming. And every time I hear of somebody who's relapsed, I say, "Oh, relapsed," but the most important thing is that they keep coming back. You can keep relapsing as many times, well, obviously not as many times, but you know what I mean. Just keep coming back, because it will stick. It will. There'll be that one day, and all of a sudden go, "Oh, that's what I mean. I get it now." And if you get it from the get-go, then that's just wonderful. But more importantly, you need to get sober for you. No amount of your family saying, "If you love me, you do this," or "If you love the kids." No, it has to be for you. You want to be able to end your pain. And if you don't want to end your pain, nobody else will.
Sounds like that was a turning point for you when you finally decided that you wanted it instead of knowing that you needed it, that you turned the corner.
Yeah, I wanted it. I was like, I cannot do this anymore. And you have to want to do it, and do it for you. Nobody else. You're the one that's got to live.
And that's such a great message. Given your experience and what you've gone through, my guess is there are going to be more than a few people who hear this podcast and are able to relate to a number of aspects of your story, because you do have a very rich story to tell, one that's full of all sorts of different emotional challenges and along the way. The fact that you are able to be sober now for
almost 4 years,
almost 4 years is, to me, a real indication that you're working a program that's working for you, and that the message that you just gave to do it for yourself is so important, as well as the fact that as you're doing it for yourself, you're helping others. So that's really big.
Yeah, and the one thing that I loved before my mum died is I told her I was in AA. My dad doesn't know, and he's, as far as my dad's concerned, I've just given up drinking. I gave up drinking for Lent and kept stuck to it. I don't know why I have a bugbear about that. We'll work on it. But I did tell my mum. I said, I'm in AA, and she said, "Good, I'm glad." So she passed away knowing. I didn't tell her about the hospital, because she was already dying. Let's not give her anything to worry about that. And so so I told her, and there was no secrets, big secrets between us. She accepted me being gay. She accepted that I was in AA, and she accepted that I'm happy.
That's great. That's great. And the knowledge that you have that it's okay to process whatever you need to do with your dad at some point says a lot right there. And so I know that if you stick close to your sponsor, stick close to the program, those kind of relationships have a way of healing as well. So I really honor the kind of program that you're working now, and
it's a lot better It really, the relationship between me and my dad is a lot better. It is, yeah. Obviously, we've just got each other now, but that notwithstanding, it did start to improve. You know, it wobbled when Mum died because grief makes people wobble, and I didn't drink on that either. I got through her funeral. I got through everything without picking up a drink, and that was just yes. I even got through my sister's dramatics. Yes.
Yes, something else to work on.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, this has just been lovely spending time with you and hearing about your life. And you've gone through a lot, and to get to the point at which you're sober today says a lot for the power that God has working in our lives when we want Him to, and when we don't, when we're aware of it, and when we're completely oblivious. One way or the other, we can get it along the way. And so I want to thank you very much for doing this today. And I know that your words are going to be helpful to others out there who need that kind of inspiration. And as I tell all my guests, I love you, and I'm sure that your program is going to be brilliant as long as you stick close to the middle of the program and to that great sponsor that you have. And
I adore the bones of you too. Oh, I'm just when she suggested this, I was like, kind of, really? Are you sure? She said, yes. Email him.
Well,
okay.
well, she knew, and I think if people go back and listen to her interview, they'll realize that she works an extraordinary program herself, and it sounds like to have a mentor like that in your life is super important.
Yeah, and the people that she's introduced me to, they are my tribe. Just wow.
Well, stick close to them, and life will improve beyond our wildest expectations.
I hope so. If Cupid could do something about my love life, that would be great. Just an arrow.
Yeah, first things first, maybe.
Yeah. Let's give you to the 4th year, then have a girlfriend.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. Nicole, thanks again so much for being on the AA Recovery Interviews podcast, and hopefully we'll have a chance to share again soon.
Okay, then. Thank you so much, Howard. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's it for today's episode of AA Recovery Interviews. I want to thank my guest, Nicole S., for sharing her story. And thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed AA Recovery Interviews, will you please tell others how to listen to it? And please take a minute to give it a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That will help others find it. Of course, you can listen to many more interviews in this podcast series by following it on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and other podcast providers. Or visit our website, aarecoveryinterviews.com, to hear every show, share your comments, and also contact us. If you want to email me directly, it's howard@aarecoveryinterviews.com. By the way, this podcast strictly adheres to AA's 12 traditions and all General Service Office guidelines for safeguarding anonymity online. I pay all production costs, and no one receives financial gain from the show. AA Recovery Interviews and my guests do not speak for or represent AA at large. This podcast is simply my way of giving back to AA that which has been so freely given to me. The next episode of AA Recovery Interviews is on the way, so keep coming back. It'll be here soon.